Greetings, my friends. Jellord here, hitting you with a little bit of talk about the 30th anniversary of Chrono Trigger. It's late night for me here, and couldn't really sleep, and I was kind of bored, thinking to myself, hey, why not talk about Chrono Trigger, since that's a game that's near and dear to my heart, I guess. And it's a game that's like been in my life for 30 years. I played it originally when I was a kid. I think I was like 12 years old the first time I played Chrono Trigger, which was roughly 2 years after it came out. Easily one of my all-time favorites. I was smitten with the tale of Glenn slash Frog and his hero slash best friend Cyrus, and also Robo's tragic story. I love the idea of a robot with a tragic story. That's still kind of a unique story in and unto Chrono Trigger. You don't get that very often in anime or, I mean, really any medium when you think about it. So that's really unique. The story of the game really struck me in a lot of ways. I mean, first of all, it got me thinking about time travel, uh, at a young age, which is fun. And it was something that intrigued me about time. I became a fan of time travel media as a result of that. I read H.G. Wells' The Time Machine because I thought Chrono Trigger was sick. I thought time travel was sick. Um, just to show off a bit, I got my physical copy of Chrono Trigger here for the SNES. I did buy this one later in life. I never actually owned this one physically. When I originally played through the game, I borrowed it from. It was loaned to me by a friend when I was a kid, and I remember too. It had like a Blockbuster Video sticker right over the front. Those bastards would just stick the stickers like right over the actual cartridge sticker. And I remember I borrowed it from my friend, and I actually managed to peel the sticker off of it without damaging the sticker underneath too much. And my buddy was like really happy that I got the Blockbuster sticker off. I thought he was going to be pissed at first because I did peel away some of it, but I managed to get most of it off without damaging the sticker underneath, surprisingly. It was one of those metallic stickers too. And I also do have my copy of Chrono Trigger for the DS here. Not complete in the box. I mean, I have the manual and the cartridge, but unfortunately, I don't have the map that comes with it. Um, just the insert and the manual here. The map goes for a lot of money. Oddly enough, the maps for a lot of games go for in a lot of cases go for more than the actual game does, which blows me away a bit. But I guess it's made out of paper and gets destroyed a lot more easier than the cards themselves. Um, but I just wanted to talk about this 30th anniversary announcement from Square Enix. And I'm going to be real with y'all. I don't have high hopes for it. I really don't. Especially because they said that it it was going to extend beyond the game. Is essentially I believe that's the kind of language they use. I don't know if that's exactly what they said, but that's along the lines. I am doing something a little different here. I'm playing a little bit of music in the background just to kind of fill the gaps as I'm talking in case I take a pause to think about what I'm saying next or whatever, because I'm doing these videos unedited. I kind of prefer this methodology, especially at least up until I get a little better at video editing. I've only just really been doing rudimentary stuff with transitions and things like that. But keeping on topic here, I'm gonna say, like, right off the bat, probably my favorite remake so far has been the Star Ocean Second Story remake. I really, really loved that game. I thought it was the perfect way to remake a game. It's sort of HD 2D, but like not quite, because that game had pre-rendered backgrounds, right? And they did render the sprites in such a way that it made it seem like it was HD 2D, but the background wasn't pixelated like you would find in, for instance, the new Dragon Quest III remake, remaster, whatever you want to call it, because the water between those two definitions is a little bit murky, I would say. Uh, just to get it out there right away, I don't really think. I mean, I'm not gonna get my hopes up, but I don't really think we're gonna get a remake or a remaster out of this announcement. If anything, maybe they'll like put out a little OVA or something. That would be cool, an animated OVA. Since I mean, I don't know if a lot of you guys know this, but we did get a Legends of Mana anime close to the same time that we got the release of the Legends of Mana remake over here. And it's funny because, which by the way, this is a great remake too. They didn't really do much to it, but honestly, even if they did it, if they did this with Chrono Trigger and just gave us a physical version of the game on the Switch, because that's my favorite thing to collect physically for at this point, because it's still a cartridge. Even if they just gave us that, I would be happy, you know? Or just a way, even if they just put it down digitally so we could play it on modern consoles, like the way that they did with the here, I'll show you all of them actually. Like, here's some good examples. Sorry, I should have been a little better prepared for this, but I mean, here's some good examples, man. Like we just got the Suikoden remaster, which I think is decent, but they didn't do anything too crazy with it. Like surprisingly, they didn't even update the menu system. Like you can't even reorganize your items in this game. We got the Pixel remaster. Love it or hate it, it was still at least a way to play all 6 of those games. We got the Collection of Mana, awesome collection. I was really impressed that they put the Game Boy. I was really impressed they put Final Fantasy Adventure on here. That was super cool, and also it's the first way that we were able to get Seiken Densetsu 3 or Trials of Mana. Also, the Grandia collection, another great. People had their complaints. I think it's awesome because it's a way for us to play it on modern consoles and own it physically. We got 10 and 10-2 on one cart, which I was real happy about. A lot of the other releases of this, like on the Vita, just had the download code and stuff. We got Final Fantasy 12, the Zodiac Age. It was very cool that we got this version, which used to just be the international version. Got that physically too. A lot of these are sealed because I have other ways of playing them, let's say. Also, the Final Fantasy 9. You know, like a lot of these ports, they didn't really do anything to them except add just a couple of quality of life upgrades to them. And then we have a few other ports I wanted to show, like the Baten Kaitos port. Also another pretty much kind of straight port, but we got it in HD, so that's cool. Modern console. Crisis Core, they didn't crazy change the game. They just updated the graphics, and we got it on a modern console. And by the way, this is a great game to own on the Switch. Runs really well. It's one of those awesome ports like Nier Automata that got a wonderful version on the Switch that runs beautifully. One that's a little less known, the Metal Max series. Like we got Metal Max Xeno. This was a remake of the original version was on the PS3, and this one just got updated graphics, and they did a little bit of quality of life upgrades. Also, a wacky, awesome game. If you're not familiar with it, it's basically an RPG with tanks. Like that's the focus, is having tanks and driving around, and that's how you do battle. And the enemies are fucking crazy. Like in Final Fantasy VII, if you liked like the goofy ass Triceratops with the tank tread legs, that's kind of all of the enemies in Metal Mag Xeno, so it might be up your alley if you get a kick out of goofy ass monsters too. And then here was just a little offshoot, Assault Suit Vulcan. This is basically a remake. They basically added some stuff to the game that they wanted to have in the original but couldn't. Another example of a game that it looks and plays very much like the original, right? All of these games, and I just wanted to show this stack off. Idiotically enough, I didn't bring Star Ocean over, but whatever. You guys probably already own it if you're watching this video or even care about the subject matter that I cover. The reason I show off a lot of these games it's not just for funsies, but I want to point out the fact that like somebody like me And anybody who's even in the remote ballpark of approaching the kind of collecting that I do, or maybe they just do it casually, they're going to buy, they do and are going to buy a lot of these types of ports. I would wager, I probably have a bit over 100 Switch games. Probably a third of them are games like this. And the reason I bring that up is because I think that there's a market there. When people try to argue that there's not a big market for Chrono Trigger, yeah, blah blah. Like, I don't think that's true. I think Chrono Trigger shares the kind of notoriety that, to put it in anime terms, something like Cowboy Bebop does. Like, you don't have to be an anime aficionado to be familiar with it, and for a lot of people, it is their introduction into anime. Or if somebody's going to suggest anime to somebody that's maybe not a big anime person, or might be interested in getting into it, or maybe that person is trying to get their friend into it, they will use something like Cowboy Bebop as a spring point to ignite that love for anime in people that maybe they didn't know they had because they didn't watch the right anime yet, right? And I'm gonna say that Chrono Trigger is that kind of a game for old school RPGs, like this game, and also in a lot of ways Final Fantasy III, I would say, because that active time battle system, I think, adds enough urgency and action to the games, to the turn-based combat, that it will capture people's attention more than, like trying to get them to start out with something like Dragon Warrior 2, or the original Dragon Warrior, right? Like, those, that might not necessarily be a good starting point for people, but for someone like me, I love that stuff. And the more lo-fi it is, the more I love it. I love to see these old systems like strain under the duress of something that awesome, like seeing what a system can do and seeing the complexity and depth that games were able to have. That's why I'm still like a huge fan of new games that people produce for old consoles. I think there's still very much a market out there for that kind of gaming. And when people say like, oh, like people aren't into the pixelated graphics and stuff like that anymore. That's why we need HD 2D and yap. You've heard these types of arguments, no doubt. Um, I really think that there's a place for those types of games. You look at the indie scene, there are so many games that come out that use that graphical style. And it's not just nostalgic. It's not just nostalgia, it's an artistic modus. It's a way of presenting, and I think that the simplicity of it creates a sort of beauty in it. Because even when it comes to art, like when you talk about art, you might look at a Renaissance painting or something like that that's like hyper realistic. And then you compare that to something like a Dadaist painting, or even an Impressionist painting. Particularly, I think the example of an Impressionist painting is most poignant. Uh, you're not going to say that an Impressionist painting is superior or inferior, or it shouldn't exist because Renaissance paintings exist, right? Like, just because there's hyper realistic art out there doesn't detract from or invalidate something like an impressionist piece of art. And just in the same way, if you think about it, pixel art is a sort of impressionism, right? Because it gives the impression of the image or the object or the character, rather than a one-to-one depiction like you might find yourself seeing in something like a more modern game, like maybe Fallout, or Red Dead Redemption, or Skyrim or something like that. Even though those, like, a couple of those games aren't all that new anymore, but it's the idea. A lot of games chase hyperrealism, and I think that to try to say that pixelated artwork is invalidated by the existence of hyperrealistic graphics, I think that's a silly way of looking at it. And I think when you compare hyper-realistic paintings to impressionist paintings, that's a poignant example of making the case that one does not devaluate or invalidate the other. So that being said, getting to the meat and potatoes of the subject here, I really don't think that we're gonna get a remake or a remaster of Chrono Trigger. It would be sick. I'd be happy to just get something like Legends of Mana out of Chrono Trigger, like just get a physical release of it. Or even if they brought it out digitally and you could buy it like you can in the on mobile, get a one for one version. It'd be super sick if we could get the DS version. I mean, ideally, we'd love to get an HD 2D remaster in the same vein, excuse me, as Dragon Warrior 3, right? And it would be awesome if they added all the stuff from the DS game, the extra stuff. Even though, some of it wasn't the best in the way, it wasn't amazing, like the monster collecting side of it. Maybe they don't have to give that to us. But I think that the rest of it, the extra dungeons, the extra final weapons for the characters, it'd be cool if they could add some new double and triple text. Maybe some little new bits of story or lore that we could see post game or something like that, or add another little side quest like with the rainbow shell, or Robo confronting Mother. Like anything like that really would be super cool. Add a little more to the story for us. But I'm not going to get my hopes up. I mean, that's all just my hopes and wishes. I wish that they would release a complete version of the DS game, coupled with all of the animated cutscenes. Maybe clean those up, make them look a little better. Because like back in the day, the video codecs they used, things like that on the DS didn't run video that great. Like those sorts of things. I think that would be cool to have those things in a definitive version. But even if they just released the vanilla Chrono Trigger to us digitally on modern consoles, I would be totally happy with just that even, right? In any case, uh, I think we're gonna end up with just like some Chrono Trigger swag. We might get some crossovers in like, I wouldn't be surprised if like this new Suikoden mobile game, if they let you recruit or purchase Chrono or Luca or Robo as characters in your 108 stars or whatever the hell it ends up being. I wouldn't be surprised if they did something like that. I wouldn't be surprised if they brought a bunch of characters from adjacent series in Square Enix, because they've done that stuff in the past. They've been doing that since Final Fantasy Tactics, if you think about it, and like Final Fantasy Tactics Adventure 2 on the, I believe it was 2, A2, whatever, on the DS. Like they had a lot of crossover characters, and they've been doing that with games for a while. So I would be surprised if they did something like that. And it was just some gotcha crap. It'd be cool if we got a little short OVA. It would be hella cool if the OVA was like the full story. That would be awesome. But I'm not going to hold my breath for that either. I have a feeling they're just going to sell some swag, maybe some clothes, do some crossover stuff. I'd be amazed if we got some kind of animated short like we did with Crisis Core, if anybody was familiar with that one. That short anime of Crisis Core is awesome. If you've never seen that, look it up sometime. It's very cool. It came with a version of Advent Children when it was released on DVD, I believe. I can't remember exactly though, but that would be kind of something cool to look for again for me. In any case, I don't know how it would feel if they tried to do a full 3D remake of Chrono Trigger, like along the lines of Trials of Mana, let's say. I don't know if I would want something like that, or even Romancing Saga 2, right? I don't know if I would want something like that. I don't know if it would do it justice. Especially 2, I feel like, I don't know, maybe not. I guess it doesn't really clash in Romancing Saga, but there's like a little part of me that feels like those graphics would maybe clash with the gameplay style a bit. And but they managed to pull it off in Romancing Saga 2, and they did a good job there. So, you know, anything's possible really, but I don't really think that this anniversary announcement, I don't think that they're gonna hit us with something big like a remaster or remake. I'd like them to. Um, but I wouldn't want them to give a remake like the full treatment like they did Final Fantasy VII. I'm not the biggest fan of Final Fantasy VII. If you've watched a couple of my live streams or any of my repair videos where I broach the topic, not the biggest fan of a three-part remake. I really feel like it's a cash grab. And I think it's a dull excuse to say that it has to be made that way with all that bombast and posh and extra. I don't think the original game wasn't about all that stuff. The original game didn't have like a pseudo open world like that. There wasn't a ton of chores to do between every little thing. You could maybe grind a little bit. There were some little side quests to do and stuff like that if you dug around and checked everywhere in the cities and looked in the forests and did the mini games. Sure, there was some side stuff you could do, but not like in the new game. I'm not a big fan of open world games with a bunch of chores to do between everything. It's not only do I think it's distracting, I really think that it ruins the pacing of the story the way it was originally intended to be told. And there's just that's the topic for a whole other video. But I think it's pertinent to bring it up here because if Square Enix tried to give it the full treatment like that, they would probably say something like, "Oh, it's too grand, too big, too much. Just think about how many world maps there are. There'd have to be a world map for each time period. We'd have to render all of that out for every time period. You'd have to have every cobblestone, crook, and cranny, and we'd have to fill everything in between, complete with Ubisoft towers, you know." And that's not the kind. I'm not interested in that kind of thing. Just like I'm not going to hold my breath for this Final Fantasy IX remake. If that ends up being episodical, I'm out. I would maybe play it once the whole thing is released and it's being sold as a bundle, because you know that's what they're going to do with the Final Fantasy VII remake. They're going to piecemeal it to us, and it's what every game company wants at the end of the day. They want to like sell us the same game over and over again with incremental changes to make their job as easy as possible while maintaining the like level of sales year after year that they're looking for. And the problem with those kinds of bloated budgets and things like that is it's just like Hollywood, man. The more you put into that game, the more money you put into it, the more copies you're just going to have to sell in order to justify that bloated budget. And it gets to a point where you're looking at how many consoles people even have in their possession as a market, and you're getting close to that number. So it's like you're looking at almost everybody that owns the console that it's released on is going to have to buy a copy to cover the cost of making the damn game, let alone making it profitable too. So I don't really believe in those kinds of remakes or remasters. I would much rather see the types of remakes and remasters that I've pointed out here. And I would much rather see something like the kind of treatment Star Ocean's second story got with it. But I'll be interested to see. Who knows? Maybe we'll get some t-shirts out of this, some pins, some Burger King toys, essentially, is what I like to call the type of swag that comes with limited run games and shit like that. Just some cheap plastic garbage for us to blow our money on and pretend it's a collectible when it's truly just a pressed piece of petroleum. But whatever. I get the feeling that that's what we're gonna end up getting. Maybe there'll be a sweet Chrono Trigger hat I can be wearing after this extended Beyond the Game merch drops or whatever it ends up being. Who knows? Maybe they'll drop a cookbook or an art book, or God, I can't imagine. Who knows? Some fucking amiibos. I don't know if anybody even gives a shit about amiibos anymore. But yeah, that's kind of my take on it. As far as remakes go, as I'm concerned, it's take it or leave it for me. I'll buy a new remake just so I can have it to play on a modern console on an HD television, and I don't have to fucking bust out my upscaler and a bunch of wires and a whole bunch of bullshit because I want to like play an old game on a new console or on a new television, I should say, or I end up buying like the Retron 1 that I did a video for recently, or even the Super Retron HD, so that I can hook up excuse me, so I can hook up and play something like Chrono Trigger on a modern display. It's like I like the remakes mostly because they go through an HDMI wire. That's pretty much where I'm at with it. And I think, I don't know, man, I think that a big portion of the core audience is close to my age. And it's a lot of people, man, that like video games were just as expensive when we were kids. A lot of people don't realize that. Something like Chrono Trigger was like a $75 game for the Super Nintendo new. So it's not that different that they're charging us $75 for games nowadays. The only difference was the games were finished back then. But it's like it's not that different. But if you're my age and you grew up poor like I did, like you couldn't afford this shit. Your family couldn't afford this shit when you were young. Or maybe they bought it for you, but you had the kind of family who like bought it for you, surprised you, and then they returned the shit within the 2 week or 30 days that they were allowed to return it to get the full money. So you basically just got an extended rental and they waited for you to finish the game. And then they're like, now we got to return it because we need food this week. That kind of growing up. I'm sure some of you probably are aware of that kind of back and forth. But yeah, a lot of people my age who have jobs and can afford to indulge in their hobbies and maybe kind of relive their childhood, they're going to be the ones that end up buying these types of games. And one thing that I think people really underestimate this day and age that I see brought up often on other channels that I think are pertinent and more in reference to film is the power of word of mouth. And it's going to be the older gamers like myself, people in their 40s. I mean, I don't have kids, but a lot of people do. My brother has kids, and they're my nieces and nephews. And guess what, man? I get my nephew into games, and his dad gets him into games. And I share anime that I like with my nephew, and his dad shares anime that he likes. We got his 13-year-old son and his younger daughters watching stuff like Neon Genesis, and Cowboy Bebop and stuff that we watched when we were kids. That's word of mouth. A lot of people don't consider that, and it's like older people like us are the ones that usher a new generation of fans, and we share it, and part of it is our infectious enthusiasm that makes them realize why these things are special, and the stories that we tell behind it are the stories that they associate with it, and that henceforth that's how they become a fan. That's why so many of these franchises are failing, because they turn their backs on fans like myself and like my brother, for instance. They turn their fans on their legacy, or they turn their backs on their legacy audience in hopes of gaining this new audience without even realizing that it is their legacy audience that will create a new audience for them. That's the big disconnect, I think. And I think a lot of it comes out of like this kind of modern anti-family sentiment that a lot of younger people have kind of been propagandized into. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. And like they've been sold on this idea by school, by college, by a lot of content creators. They've been kind of influenced into thinking that having a family in general is like a conservative value, like reproduction is somehow a conservative value. But like, reality check here, it's a human value. We are a species after all, and people tend to forget that we're also an animal, and we need to reproduce if we're not bound to be extinct, right? So it's like this anti-family sentiment, I think, in a lot of ways, kind of leads to this anti-family consumerism, where they're no longer trying to sell products to a family. They're trying to sell products to an individual without realizing that it is the family, your parents, your aunts and uncles, and people like that are going to usher in a new fandom, and they're going to share their excitement for something with the younger generation. That's what's going to create the younger generation. The only thing the creators of the original IP, or the people who are carrying the torch of the original IP, need to worry about is staying true to that IP so that it stays the thing that it always was, or at least close to, has the most important characteristics and qualities of the original idea, because that's what's going to get carried over generationally. It's just like any old stories, man. Like any stories that were told in ancient times that have endured until now, they had things added to them. They had cultural flair added to them over time, and the stories were expanded upon, but it was still principally the same basic story, the same basic legend, let's say. You know, how many times have they retold the story of Little Red Riding Hood? How many times have they retold the story of Hansel and Gretel, or the Three Little Pigs? You know, all of these nursery rhymes and legends, the story of Beowulf, these epic sagas. Like, how many times were these stories told and retold, or the same types of stories told? You look at Greek mythology, that's basically superheroes now. For fuck's sake, we still have Thor in our culture. A lot of different Greek gods are a part of the Marvel universe that used to exist before it was turned into whatever it is now. But I'm gonna pump the brakes right here, because I don't want to get too crazy into this topic matter, because I would probably talk about it forever, and especially broaching into topics of like anime, certain animes, the stories being told over and over time and evolving. That's the way that legend, lore, and story endures the passage of time. It's through family and loved ones, man. Like, and since a lot of companies are anti-family at this point, they've kind of lost the plot. I mean, I guess it's the most poignant way to put it. They've lost the plot on a lot of their stuff, because they've turned their back on their legacy audience, and they forget that the legacy audience, they are the ushers of the new generation. They usher the new generation into the fandom, you know. But yeah, I guess that's the point I wanted to make. I'm gonna leave it there. The video's already getting a bit too long. This seems to always happen to me, and I know people don't really fucking want to watch like 35-minute videos, but I can't help myself. I have a lot to say about this stuff once I actually get going. Also, just a little shout out. I got this sick Phantasy Star 4 shirt on. And speaking of little collections, for the Game Boy Advanced, I still got my copy of Phantasy Star Collection. Real disappointed that this didn't have Phantasy Star 4 on it back in the day. But at least the first 3 are on there. And speaking of which, where the hell is our Phantasy Star collection, man? I mean, where's our PSO collection, man? We got it on the GameCube again. Why the hell didn't that shit drop on the Switch? But I digress. I'm going to get too deep into the rabbit hole of remakes here, and what we still have in the pipeline that probably should be coming, F-Zero. In any case, that's going to be it for me. I'm going to shut this one down. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you found this entertaining at all, or like my chit chat or my insights into all of this world of gaming and anime, leave a little comment. Let me know what your favorite remake is so far, or remaster, and why, or even, you know, what's one of these older RPGs, older games that came into your life at a point in time, and how did it endure, and maybe even tell me a story about how you introduced one of these games to your kids or your nieces or nephews, and turned them into fans, or any anime that you might have made a fan out of someone. That's the power of the word of mouth. And if you're not subscribed, hey, I'm trying to get to 50 subscribers. I'm a little tiny guy. I want to get to 50 subscribers, because then I'll be able to live stream while I'm filming myself, instead of just doing the gaming streams all the time. So I could actually do live chats like this once I get to 50. So yeah, leave a little sub if you enjoyed my commentary, and I'm going to work on making these videos a little more on the side, where you won't need any visual cues. You can just listen to me talk in the background of whatever you're doing. It could be like a second piece of content you could be consuming while maybe you're watching something else, whatever. I know a lot of people are dual screening it these days. So in any case, that's going to be Jellord out. And as always, thank you, my lovely lords and ladies.